Hello, welcome back to Thriving with Technology. I'm August Bryce. This is our first podcast of 2021, our first in a while, actually. Today is a good one. We're speaking with Rob Metzinger, president of Safe Living Technologies. He's one of the top experts I've ever talked to on wireless EMF, or what's called radio frequency radiation. He teaches classics on EMF radiation at the Institute of Building Biology. In this episode, he talks about the importance of detecting and protecting. He shares tips on using shielding and other EMF protection, and the importance of a certified EMF meter. Rob is one of the world's leading authorities on detecting EMF in your environment. His team at Safe Living Technologies even designs and makes meters, which I love. I've got one in my hand right now. I keep one in the car. I have one at the office. And the reason I do is it helps to make, or it doesn't just help, it makes the invisible wireless energy visible. And Rob even puts sound signatures on his meter. So right now, what you're hearing from this meter is nothing, but I'm going to turn Bluetooth on my computer. I'm sitting in front of my computer now. Hear that? That's the sound of Bluetooth wireless energy. Now we're going to add Wi-Fi. Okay. Hear that? That's Wi-Fi energy. Ooh, listen to that. Okay, those are two different sounds of EMF radiation, and it's so important to know about EMF in your environment. And you might even be thinking, why should I care about EMF? Well, it's because it's everywhere in our digital age. We just couldn't do wireless without it. It comes from the invisible waves of energy that are present when wireless devices are turned on. So you've got a smartphone or any device, your laptop, a tablet, your Alexa, even those virtual reality headsets that I think are so crazy, or a Nest, any device that's using cell signal or Wi-Fi or Bluetooth is emitting EMF radiation. And now we've got over 30 years of peer-reviewed scientific research, and there's no doubt that this type of EMF has a biological effect on our bodies. But we all react differently, which is good, and most of us don't notice them at all, but it doesn't mean that they're not impacting us, because they are. It's like other toxins. EMFs are the reason I started Tech Wellness. I figured out years ago that I was sensitive to it, and it's probably going to seem strange to some of you, but I can literally feel the tingling energy from a smartphone when it's in my hand. It does not feel good. I know the Wi-Fi is on in my house. In fact, it wakes me up, and that's why the Wi-Fi in this house is unplugged, put away, and used only in emergency situations. People refer to people like me as a canary in the coal mine for EMF radiation. I've got this video of the first time I actually held a cell phone in my hands. It was Christmas 30 years ago. And you can see that I actually cringe and my body jolts when the phone turns on. And for many years, I thought that everybody could feel the same thing I was feeling. So actually, it was really a gift for me to start connecting the dots early back when I did, because back then I was like a total outlier. You had to search hard to understand the mechanics behind how, these wireless devices were communicating and the physics behind what was happening. And as I did, I started to find out more and more scientific studies were showing that there indeed was a biological reaction to this radiation. And I discovered the book Cell Phone Invisible Hazards of the Wireless Age by George Carlo, and that really got me going on my way. As I learned more, I started looking for ways to turn down those physical reactions that I was having, and I wanted to address the other issues that the digital age was bringing with it, like privacy concerns and the fact that I could see how so many of the people I loved and knew were becoming enthralled with their phones. Because, I couldn't use mine. I could observe what was going on. And I saw that it was almost to the point of obsession. I started blogging and sharing what I learned. And today, Tech Wellness is a platform with information, experts, and solutions that empower people to live balanced with technology. Check it out for science-backed solutions. We're not about fear. We're about mindful living. We believe you can thrive in the digital age. We focus on mind, body, spirit, and safety. Your mind to be focused, your spirit to be more connected and present, and your safety so that you can guard your privacy, and your body to be healthier. And that's why today in this podcast, we're focusing on how to find and protect yourself from the invisible EMF in your environment. So right now, here's my chat with Rob Metzinger. I'll be back at the end with my 5 top takeaways and a special offer. Hi, Rob.
Hi, August.
So great to talk to you. I'm really thrilled to be able to talk to you today because I'm just fascinated by your company. I'm fascinated that you build and create meters and that your business has probably just exploded, right?
It's definitely increased, correct. Awareness is growing daily on this topic.
You can say that again. We're in the middle of it. This topic is definitely trending. So I'm really happy to talk to someone who knows inside and out what's going on. And I first want to start with, you really are off the grid, aren't you?
I'm in the country. I'm about half an hour away from the nearest town. And RF-wise, it's pretty quiet out where I am.
So places like that, RF-wise, off the grid, still exist?
There are sheltered spots, sheltered areas where RF is not as strong as other areas. They're in these days they're difficult to find, and you definitely have to go out into the country and perhaps in a forested environment as well, or out in the mountains and foothills in some areas. They are out there. They are difficult to find.
And so for people who might be listening who don't know what RF is, that's radio frequency. And that's the field that comes from all wireless energy, right?
That's correct. Yes. Anything that has a wireless transmitter emits radio frequency radiation. Yes.
And so when you go outside in your backyard, do you pick up any of this RF EMF?
Yes, we do. It's impossible to avoid everything. So when I go out into my yard in the summertime, it's really good. On the Safe and Sound Pro 2 meter, I'm getting readings of under 5 microwatts per square meter in the outside area. We're surrounded by a lot of deciduous trees, and when those leaves fall in the fall time and into winter, my readings go up. They go up to 20, 30, 40 microwatts per square meter, because the leaves on the trees aren't shielding me as good as they are in the summertime.
So it's not a myth. Trees actually, and maybe this is because these trees are very dense, but trees can shield EMF?
Absolutely. Any obstruction can block radio frequency radiation, yes.
So I didn't think that we would be talking about this particular topic, but I do want to know, because people ask me all the time, if they fill up their office with plants, will they be protected from the wireless energy coming from their desktop or their laptop?
I don't believe so. I think you would need to, like in my case, it's cell phone tower radiation. So the cell phone towers are maybe about half a mile away from me. And the trees are between me and the source, which are the towers. And when they're in blossom, or when the leaves are out, they're made of water and other components, and they physically block the radio wave signals from passing through, as the radio wave signals travel primarily in a straight line. And there's a direct shield between me and the source with these leaves. Now, just having plants scattered randomly in an office is probably not going to do it. You would have to stack them pretty densely between you and the source, which is a wireless router.
You would have to know exactly who the source was. Like if you were just in an office building and you weren't sure exactly where the router was, these, even if it was a densely packed area of trees or plants, house plants, you'd have to know exactly where the direction was coming from.
That's correct. And it's challenging in an office environment because you're getting reflections off of all surfaces. In my case, it's a direct line of sight to these towers, and there's no reflections coming in from other directions. So whereas inside in an office, radio waves reflect off all surfaces. So you can have some plants between you and the router, but I'm not sure how effective that's even going to be to block them. But there's other pathways that these signals will take. They'll bounce off ceilings, floors, and walls and reflect all over the place and eventually make it to you. So that's the challenge about shielding an indoor environment with all these reflections off of other surfaces.
Okay, so everybody listening, bottom line, plants are beautiful. They can definitely enhance your environment, but please do not depend on them to block the EMF radiation coming from your wireless devices. It's not a thing. It can't possibly be. So thank you, Rob. Thanks for clearing that up. I've talked to people about that, but we have a lot of myths going around because the topic is so interesting to people. And so one of the myths is, fill your, they don't even say fill, they say get a houseplant. And that way you don't have to worry about the EMF radiation. And there are very popular articles and even EMF quote unquote specialists that are recommending this as a type of shielding. And my concern is that people might feel that they're protected and then end up having the consequences of not being protected. So that's why.
Yeah, August, there's some points here to make as well. And any of these theories should be measured before and after to verify the effectiveness. There's all sorts of things that could be happening that we just don't see. And unless you're there and do an investigation on exactly what's happening and measurements before and after are critical. And that's to prove anything for sure. That's what you need to do. You need to do measurements before and measurements after and analyze the data that you gather. And if there is some type of shielding going on by chance, an investigation and trying to understand what's going on is always required. So,
that's so reasonable. That's so correct. And that is why I love your company, Safe Living Technologies, because not only do you design, build, and sell EMF meters, but you also do the consulting and the teaching, which is so important right now. But what I really wanted to talk to you about today were these amazing tools that you create, that Rob makes meters that can make the invisible EMF energy visible. And when he talks about assessing a situation, like an EMF shielding situation before and then after, you're talking about using those meters, right?
That's correct. Yes. Meters are great, but also having some certified data behind them to verify what they do is really important as well. And we're all for that also.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And that's so you do all that. But how does one begin to go into the business of making a meter? I'm just really curious. How did that begin for you, making meters, EMF meters particularly?
Right. Well, yeah, it takes it was a long process for me because I've been in this business for close to 20 years now. And it's recognizing all the meters I've seen along the way and what they're capable of doing and what I wish they did. And, some perform really well, some perform poorly. It's analyzing, all of the meters that I've seen and trying to take the best qualities from each one and pack it into one and make it reasonably priced. So, it was a chore of analyzing many different types of meters over the years and trying to make one that was certified, that was affordable, and performed well. And also, we're concerned with measuring really low levels because of the people we deal with are electrically sensitive, and they require meters to measure very small levels of radio frequency radiation. So there's a specialty. It takes a special type of engineering to make a meter that's sensitive enough to do that. And a lot of the meters out there are geared for industry guidelines, and industry guidelines are interested in measuring really high levels of radiation as opposed to low levels. So, there was a lot of testing we had to do in order to make it that sensitive for electrically sensitive people. So it was a long journey in order to create these meters and to get them to the specifications that we wanted them to be at.
Well, you have two really beautiful meters that I love using. But so how long did it take to create those or even the first one that you came out with, which was the classic, the smaller one? Was that the
right?
first one?
Yeah, the classic took us about a year of development, and learning and understanding what we're developing, and that we started with that, and then built off the Pro from the basics we learned from the classic. Approximately a year of development, and then the Pro took us about another year to develop as well. So it's quite a process of going into these testing labs and testing chambers, running some experiments to test how your meters perform, and then going back to the engineering and design phase to try and perfect what you're measuring.
Okay. Is it a group of people that does this together, or do you just do this yourself?
No, we have an engineering team we work with as well. And it's a whole team effort, coming at it from all different directions. Yeah.
And you talked about how you measure for sensitive people. Tell us a little bit about that, about the background of how you determine what a sensitive person can be exposed to.
Right. Well, it comes down to the building biology guidelines, and these guidelines are designed for measuring the biological effects that can affect a human being. These building biology guidelines are set at very low levels compared to industry guidelines, and what we're finding is if we can create an environment that has less than 10 microwatts per square meter in it, many of these electrically sensitive people are able to exist symptom-free, and that's the goal, to try and make an electrically sensitive person comfortable in an environment, and that's basically what we have to do, and we have to make sure the meter is able to measure accurately at those low levels, at 0.1 microwatts per square meter, all the way to 10 microwatts per square meter.
Right. And so what we're talking about, if you have a Safe and Sound Classic, and if you want to go on our website or Rob's website and see one, we're talking about being in that green area, or can we hop over to that yellow area? When you're talking about the EMF sensitivity, are we talking slight or moderate?
Yeah, when we designed the meters, we wanted it to be simple. So yeah, the Safe and Sound Classic, basically green is good, right? Mm-hmm. A flashing green light is ideal. It's below 1 microwatt per square meter. And if you're still in the green, you're below 10 microwatts per square meter.
And so I actually am fortunate enough to live in a home as well that keeps me in a flashing green. But I come to my office, I can't. Well, once we went through the office and we took the meter everywhere, and we were able to, just by eliminating sources that were coming out of our office, like people's phones and people's computers and people's wireless speakers, we were able to get into a solid moderate level. And we are surrounded by other people's Wi-Fis. We're on a busy street. And so that did give me hope. What do you think about a situation that's just straight moderate?
Right. Well, these building biology guidelines are designed for sleeping environments. So it's really critical to get your sleeping environment as low as possible so your body can do its repairing from its daytime exposure. And, when you're working during the daytime in an office environment, it's really tough to control sometimes. And, you do the best you can, like you did. And, getting it to a moderate level, which is between 10 and 100 microwatts per square meter, might be the best you can do. And that's what you got to adapt to and live with. Obviously green if you can, but not always possible in a work environment. It's challenging.
I think so. I think, and I love the standards, and I love how you've listed all the standards from different organizations on your website. I list standards as well, but my standards for personally are much more generous, because I could find really very few people that could get into that low environment, and I didn't want to discourage them. I wanted to help them at the very least put their phone 3 feet away, just so that they would, at the very least, take some of the awareness of it, but not be completely afraid, unless, of course, they do have VHS. and I do want to talk about that in a second, just how the levels have increased dramatically. But first, I want to ask you, do you have EHS?
I don't. I believe I'm a little bit aware of my environment. If I concentrate enough when I'm in a high exposure area, I can feel things change a little bit. First thing that happens to me is the back of my neck starts tensing up and getting a little stiff, and a headache will start developing. I only know that because I've done this so many times. I'm in a clean environment, and when we go out and do our testing, and I have high exposure for long periods of time, you notice these little things, and that's kind of what I've noticed. And then when I get back to my home or my office where it's a quiet environment again, those symptoms will go away after a day or so.
So the symptoms are what? You feel a bit of a tension?
Yeah, exactly. For me, it tenses up the back of my neck, and then it'll develop into a headache, hours or into the evening, and it usually takes a day or so to go away. But yeah, if you can monitor your environment and know you're in a clean environment and note how you feel, once you go into a polluted RF environment, you may notice different symptoms coming along. Make note of them and, see if it happens again and again when you go from a quiet to a noisy RF environment. These electrically sensitive people that come to us, they're very sharp because they've self-diagnosed this on their own. They've proved this to themselves over and over again, confirming that they are electrically sensitive by going into quiet environments and noisy environments and noting the differences that happen to them when they go into these environments.
And I love hearing from someone who doesn't have EHS like you, because we know, we know there's a biological effect on everyone. However, when we're sensitive, we can get away from it because it's so profound. The feelings are, for me, also are just so profound. But I do believe that people who aren't sensitive may be feeling those things, like you said, the tension, maybe anxiety, maybe a headache. And it's so nice to quantify your situation like you're recommending people do, so that they can maybe even see how much better they feel without it, and then benefit from not being around the EMF if they don't have to be.
Right, exactly. Yeah, just do, this is all about doing experiments to see what makes you feel better. And a lot of the business is part of that, giving people options in order to get symptom relief or feel better.
Have you been able to help people with what you do, not just detecting, but also the mitigation efforts that you make and the shielding efforts that you make? Have you been able to help people, and have you seen changes?
Well, definitely with shielding, there's changes, or even as simple as, turning off your Wi-Fi router, getting rid of the cordless phones in your home. And all of a sudden, people are starting to sleep at night. We also notice this when we shut off power in the sleeping area. It's not just radio frequency waves that are affecting electrically sensitive people. It's exposure to power as well. So dealing with both of these factors, can make a huge difference. And, some people it affects immediately and they see results immediately. Some, it can take a while. It can take weeks. It can take months. Everybody, their own biological, say, damage or effects that occur to their body, and the healing process and results are different in each person. So it's hard to really know what to expect from each person because everybody's different.
And that's true. We're all different. And I've always compared it to just other toxins. We might find people who are sensitive to chlorine bleach, and maybe immediately they're symptom free, and maybe others, it takes a while to heal. And so to me, I compare it to just other toxins in the environment. If people want to try to understand what we're talking about, does that resonate with you as well?
Oh, absolutely. It's a perfect way of looking at it. Yes.
And so, you talked for a second about shielding, and you mentioned it just now. And I know that you have also developed shielding products. What type of shielding have you developed? I'm curious about that.
We're trying to I keep it economical as well. So we don't carry a lot of shielding materials. We carry some basic materials, and one of them is aluminum foil. Like aluminum foil, believe it or not, straight out of your kitchen cupboard, is an excellent shield. It's a solid piece of metal. It blocks radio waves very effectively. So we have a material that's like a builder's grade aluminum foil material. That
where would we put that? So Rob, so just so that everyone listening understands what to do with that aluminum foil, do we wrap it on the back of our phones?
For the product that we were using, it's designed to be placed between you and the source. So this builder's grade material is basically designed to be used as a vapor barrier. So it would go underneath drywall if you're building a new home, and form a barrier between you and the source, which would be a cell phone tower. That's what that was designed for. And of course, if you put a shield up in a house or in a room, you don't want to have wireless devices inside that area, just because of the reflections that can be caused because of it. And that's basically how these signals are blocked. They're reflected back in the other direction. The aluminum foil was one item. There's an aluminum mesh as well that can block radio waves, believe it or not. The aluminum screen on your windows kind of works the same way. And, basically metal that has threads in a certain grid pattern, it blocks radio waves fairly effectively as well. Once we get into the very high gigahertz waves, though, the wavelength is very small. So it can pass through these openings in mesh, but where we have that foil, that solid material, the radio waves, even the smaller wavelengths, it's a solid piece of metal, so they can't get through. Those are the two kind of building materials that we have. And we also carry different kinds of shielding fabrics. And these fabrics basically have this metal grid of wires woven into them as well and block RF. And we use it for curtains and bed canopies. So those are two very popular items as well. One of the main entry points for RF into a home can be through the windows, if they're older windows especially. The sleeping environments, we need to try and get down below 10 microwatts per square meter. So bed canopies, RF shielding canopies are a really good solution for that.
And I love this, Rob, because I have tried shielding, and you're making it sound very easy and very practical and very protective. But I really think you should let people know about the situations that can occur if someone that ends up installing it themselves. What are the things to look out for?
Right. Yeah. Every type of mitigation has secondary effects, and shielding RF definitely has that as well. And I look at shielding as kind of a last resort. We always like to try and eliminate all the sources if at all possible, and keep the environment as natural as possible. By installing shielding, you're creating an unnatural environment, and you got to look at it as a trade-off, because you're going to create a secondary issue, but you're going to be blocking a primary main issue. Like if you're, half a mile from a cell phone tower and you're getting hit with high levels of microwave radiation, installing a shield could be very beneficial for you. If you install a shield, you have to worry about reflections on the inside. You need to make sure you eliminate all your inside sources.
Completely. So folks, do not go and put a bunch of foil on your windows and then turn on your cell phone inside, or put your Wi-Fi on inside. Correct? You've just defeated the purpose.
That's correct as well. Yes. And definitely you have to understanding what the source is, implementing, detect by measuring, understand what the source is, protect. So install shielding, and then verify afterwards with a measurement. Because, you always want to make sure that you measure after you shield, because many strange things can happen with RF shielding. And for peace of mind and to be sure, you always want to measure before and after to make sure the net result at the end is positive.
Exactly. And I want to go back to something you said when you were talking about the screens, the metal screens, and the wave that can actually get through the screen. Are you talking about a 5G wave?
Yes, millimeter waves are very high frequency waves. Have a very small wavelength. They can get through a lot of openings, and these small openings in meshes. They can definitely get through those. Another property of these 5G waves is they have problems penetrating buildings and glass areas. So they often have difficulty getting into buildings. Cell phone companies have technology that helps them do that, these beamforming transmitters that help them pass through buildings better, but there's still difficulty passing through buildings at the current power levels that they're allowed to transmit at these days.
Do you have a meter yet that can pick up that wave?
No, unfortunately, we don't. And unfortunately, meters that are out there are kind of geared for industry as well. They are very expensive, and there's really nothing affordable out there right now that can measure those millimeter waves, 2.4 gigahertz up to 90 gigahertz. So yeah, it's on our wish list for meters to design. We're working on it, but it's going to take some time for something to develop in that field.
And so, you hear it like we all have. We're hearing so much about 5G, and there's a lot of people have a lot of fear about it. What do you recommend in terms of detection and shielding as far as 5G goes, the actual millimeter wave that may or may not be out there right now?
Well, yeah, exactly. That's the thing. So at this point in time, I think 99.99% of the waves out there from the cellular system is under 6 gigahertz. So all the standard methods for blocking 99.9% of them can be used. And for the 5G signals, you just have to make sure that the material you're using would work at, 24 to 40 or to 60 gigahertz. And a lot of materials have difficulty at those frequencies. So you're almost looking at solid metal to block these signals, because any little gap will let these little millimeter waves through. And solid metal. We know that shielding paint will do it as well, this carbon-based shielding paint. The window film that we have does very good at high frequencies as well. Yeah, and the challenge is with these frequencies actually penetrating buildings too. So there's very much still to learn about this. These signals aren't out there as much as we think they are at this point in time. Things may change, and things always change in this business. So we'll just have to monitor and see how this true 5G development goes over time.
So right now we can rest a little bit knowing that you said about 1% of the wireless energy out there may be this millimeter wave.
Right. There's installations out there, and it's primarily in, highly densely populated areas, like some downtown streets in some major cities have this at this point in time. But for this technology to get out into the suburbs, I just don't see it happening very quickly, if at all.
Great. That's good news. Very good news. And Rob, when you were talking about the shielding and the detection before and after, so just want to get this straight. Before you use shielding, detect. After you use shielding, detect. And the shielding that you're talking about is home shielding. You're not talking about wearing a cap or covering yourself with a blanket, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And, you and I were at an EMF conference last year that we both sponsored, and that was great. Great to meet you in person. But there were a couple of people there that wore EMF jumpsuits, full protection. Do you remember seeing that?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when I spoke to them about it, they said that in addition to the jumpsuits, which also covered their feet, they had little booties that covered their feet. They also wore visors that would reflect the EMF away from their face. And they said that they were so sensitive that normally they also had their face covered. But for the conference, because there were so many steps that they took to eliminate EMF in the conference area, that they were able to wear just a visor. And so knowing that, and knowing that these people really, really were incredibly sensitive and were taking great care and came to a conference just to learn all about EMF and what they could do about it. What do you say to people who think they should just put a hat on and be protected from EMF?
Right. Over the years, we've seen various reactions to wearing shielded clothing or metallic clothing. It's kind of a love-hate relationship. I mean, some people do really well and they love it. And other people, they react really, really poorly to it. So I myself am still trying to understand the effects of shielded clothing on the body. And it's just something we have to learn about as we go on here. And I would say if you're going to try it, do it as an experiment and listen to what your body says. And if it reacts negatively, then it's probably not for you, or you want to try a different approach to it.
Yeah, I've tried them all, and way back, as soon as everything came out, I started trying everything, and I realized that the heat that I felt, and it's not a heat that anyone else can feel. It's just a heat that I feel in my body, and like a tingling. It always increased it. It just made that bizarre heat that I feel worse. And then I started to understand that it's reflecting. So maybe it's reflecting to the areas that aren't covered, and that's why I'm feeling that sensation.
Yeah, and then there's conductive fabric and non-conductive fabric, and is there an insulating layer between you and these fabrics? That may help. Yeah, when radio waves hit a metal, they cause internal current flow inside the material, similar to the frequencies that are hitting it. So does that then transfer onto your body if you're in direct contact with it? There's so much we need to learn and understand about this, first of all. So yeah, I just use a little bit of caution if you're going to experiment with shielded clothing.
And then the last thing about shielding, we'll move off of it, but what about the shielding that goes on a phone? I mean, you probably know how I feel about it. I'm not a fan of putting my phone in a pouch that's partially shielded. Have you tried the phone cases that are shielded on the top, or have you tried a pouch?
Back when they first came out many years ago, we did some experimenting with them, but it's kind of like when you go into an elevator and, you start losing the service of your phone. And what happens is the phone will actually increase its transmission in order to try and get a signal. So that's kind of the same thing that's happening with your phone when it's in a pouch. You're probably going to increase its signal. It's going to probably wear out the battery or drain down the battery quicker. I'm not sure how effective it will really be for you, especially if you're still in direct contact with it and it's on your hip in a pouch. It's all that RF is hitting that shield, and it's still kind of in contact with your body. In your demonstrations, I think you demonstrated it's not completely sealed either, so it's leaking out in certain areas, which can cause hot spots. I think the only true way of achieving protection is to eliminate the source, and the source is the phone. So I would say, you'd have to try and get it off your body for sure, and ultimately put it in airplane mode and check messages when you need to, or use the phone when you need to, as opposed to having it on all the time.
And the piece that comes with that, is so awesome. One last question back to your meters. Have you noticed, since you've been working with meters and creating meters for 15 years? You've been using a meter, or 20?
I've been using meters for about 20 years, yes.
Have you noticed just an increase in the ambient readings?
Well, back in the days, if you're close to a tower, the ambient readings were pretty high still. But back then, you would find a lot more sheltered spots. Now, the coverage, there's so many towers out there that it's really tough to find these sheltered areas. So we're still getting, significant readings, and they definitely have went up too. But I find it's more the sheltered spots. There's not that many of them. The cell phone companies are doing a great job, getting coverage in many places. And, the cell phone, you're not dropping signals as we did in the old days either. We used to drive down the road and it'd be normal to drop a signal, but that just doesn't happen anymore. Yeah, the coverage area is definitely more densely radiated with this RF radiation from more towers.
And do you think it's all cell phone radiation or Wi-Fi, or do you think it's the combination?
I think it's mostly cell phone outside. Wi-Fi doesn't tend to transmit far out of people's homes. It may affect, if you have your Wi-Fi on, it may affect 2 or 3 homes down the street, and then it pretty well ends.
Unless, Rob, you're in a city like we are, and there's mesh networks, and they serve to form sort of an umbrella of this, 12-block area that I'm in. Have you seen stuff like that?
Okay. No, not in my area, but yeah, it can exist out there for sure.
And you know what I love? Okay, I have to tell everybody, your sound signatures are the coolest, because I can tell that it's Wi-Fi. versus cell phone. And how did you come to create these? So Rob's meters, when you're measuring RF energy, and that can be from any wireless device, he's put this sound onto that particular wave. How did you do that? And how did you think of doing it?
I can't take credit for that. That was developed before my time, and I just thought it was a great feature to have. And it has to do with the modulation or the data that's basically being sent by these phones, and it's the frequency of the data pattern that's coming off the phones. And it's not the carrier wave. Like the carrier wave for a DEX 6.0 telephone would be 1.8, 1.9 gigahertz. It's the modulation on that. So it's the actual data that's coming through. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're just basically sending through a speaker. And because it's low frequency, it's not this high gigahertz range. We can play it on a speaker and you can hear it because it's low frequency. And that's the biological part for our bodies as well, because our bodies operate at low frequencies, starting, below 1 hertz and going up to a few hundred hertz. So I'm told, and a lot of that, these modulated signals coming from pulse digital devices can be in that range. And, that's one of the reasons we suspect the biological effects occurring. But yeah, it's each device has its own modulation or data transmission pattern. And that's what these sounds you're hearing. That's what these sounds are that you're hearing. And it can help you easily identify the source, because just looking at a screen at a number really doesn't tell you much about what's causing it. But these audio patterns can really help you identify sources. And, just by using the meters for a short period of time, you'll quickly be able to identify what a wireless router sounds like, what a cordless phone sounds like, what a cell phone tower sounds like. Those are the three main offenders that we see all over and over again.
Right. It's awesome. And I love what you did that description just now when you talked about the modulation and the biological effect. Another myth, or not a myth really, an argument that I hear is, well, they're everywhere. The same energy is occurring naturally in the environment. So tell me just a little bit from an engineer's perspective, the difference between that wave that might be occurring naturally versus the one that's happening because it's unnatural, man-made.
Right. Yeah. These are called technical waves or technical fields, and they're generated by man. What exists in nature for AC alternating current waves is at a super low level, hundreds of thousands, millions of times less than what we're being exposed to, and what we evolved with, becoming human beings in the 20th century here, 21st century.
You mentioned the modulation, and to me, it's when you put that information on the signal, because nature didn't put the data on the signal.
That's a really good way of putting it, August. You're right. Yeah, that sums it up quite nicely.
And so, can my meter, my safe living technology meter, can it also detect the waves that are made by nature?
They're at such a low level that I don't think you'll be able to measure that, August.
Okay, just curious. Wanted to know from the man who made it. And so I know I keep saying it's the last question, but this is close to the last question. First of all, what's an electronics engineering technologist, and how did you get into the field?
Oh, sure. Yeah, when back in high school, just making decisions, I knew I wanted to get into the tech area. And it was either, machine shop or electronics. So I chose the electronics path, and in the computer system area to go through. Computers were big in the late 80s, and the first PC came out at that time. So I thought it'd be a good field to get into, and it was. It was a great field. I was in the computer service technology field for 17, 18 years. And that was a great place to be. I enjoyed my job. And an electronic engineering technologist basically is not an engineer. The engineers, basically what I did was I would test what the engineers designed and built. and, work with the measuring equipment to test, these engineering designs and make sure they perform as they should perform. So that's what an electronics engineering technologist does. And then I was just able to apply that skill set to the electromagnetic radiation field as well when I decided to switch over to this business. And yeah, for me, it was a gradual switch. It took a while to understand how this field will develop into a business, and there's definitely opportunities there for technical people. It's a technical field, and it's difficult to understand the concepts that are occurring here. And anybody with a technical background will has a good chance of doing quite well understanding all the phenomena that occur in this field.
Before we go, what's the one thing that we haven't talked about that you think everybody should know right now?
Every level of reduction you can achieve in electromagnetic field exposure is worth taking. If you can just get it down a little bit, but it's all worth it. The less exposure we have to this, the higher quality of life we're going to experience long term.
Great. That's so good. And if people want to find you, if they want to get a hold of you, where can they find you? And do you offer your services as a consultant, or are we mainly just talking about the business now?
I'm at www.slt.co, Safe Living Technologies, Inc. And we do offer consultation services. We have a large service provider list throughout the country as well, of all certified trained building biologists that can come out and do home inspections for people, and also do telephone consultation services. And that would be under our website, under company, and then local service providers.
I love the building biologist. I too have a listing, but also if you really want to learn from Rob, you're a teacher at the Institute, are you not?
That's correct. We're right now, we just finished our 312 advanced electromagnetic radiation training online on Sunday. We're getting ready to do another course shortly in the next week or so. And building biology is a great way to get exposed to all the theory and practicality of actually doing some measurements to assess and determine field strength of these fields and how to mitigate them.
Absolutely. There's no training like that of a building biologist, honestly. If you really are having issues in your home, any type of EMF, electromagnetic, RF, any type, definitely a building biologist is the person to call. And to think that you're an instructor, I just have such great respect for you. Thank you so much, Rob, for joining us today.
Well, you're welcome, August. My pleasure.
And here are my 5 top takeaways from my great interview with Rob Metzinger. EMF awareness is increasing daily. This is number 1. The only way to make sure you know how much wireless EMF is in your home is to use a radio frequency meter. Make sure your meter is certified to be accurate. Number 2, the best EMF protection is distancing yourself from the source. We always say distance is your friend. So put as much space as you can between you and your phone, your computer, the wireless speakers in your home, etc., or turn them off or on airplane. Number 3, shielding or blocking EMF is really a tricky proposition. So whether you're attempting to use a tall forest over your roof to block a cell phone tower in the neighborhood, or metallic material on your walls, or around your phone or laptop, or on your body, it's important to use a meter before you shield and after to measure and verify the effectiveness. And 4, as an engineer and EMF instructor, Rob helped us understand how metal material or shielding can reflect those electromagnetic fields, those invisible wireless energy signals away, but that means it can reflect it back to you, so you have to be careful. He also told us that some people feel better with shielding clothing and some people don't. Number 5, finally, even very low levels of EMF can affect you. Rob creates meters according to the building biology guidelines for the amount of EMF that can cause biological effects. Find a meter that has accuracy down to low levels of wireless radiation. And speaking of those, we have in the notes a great discount to our 2 Safe Living Technologies meters on techwellness.com. and they ship free. Next podcast, I've got another great guest. So the trick is to subscribe so you won't miss it. And it really helps to get the word out if you can please give us a nice rating on Apple or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening to Thriving with Technology from TechWellness.com.